Thanks, Dave. What happens when you gritty up the toughest superheroes and villains from the DC universe and put them in a room? This. All right, Hex, time to reveal my surprise.
Okay. Oh, it's your figurine collection.
Figurine collection.
Injustice Gods Among Us comes to us from the makers of Mortal Kombat and throws together a pretty decent selection of DC superheroes and villains to biffo it out. And they don't pull any punches. I've never seen superheroes get so tattered and beaten up before. Can we...
Scarecrow's down there?
Can you just bring it back? Got plenty of time for that. This is a modern, gritty and dark fighter, from the look of each character to the backdrops to the more technical fighting mechanics. This game is set far apart from the likes of Capcom fighters or even MK vs DC.
I think not being shackled to the mechanics of Mortal Kombat has actually really helped this game. Injustice wants to be taken seriously as a fighter, and it's worth taking it seriously. We're going to spend a bit of time with the campaign on this game because, for once, it's a campaign that's actually worth playing through.
Yes, in fighters, we're used to seeing some of the most ridiculous reasons for two characters to start fighting each other. But you can tell NetherRealm have worked really hard to build a compelling story here.
You gave him a nuke? Most of the League dies, and Superman's beloved city is vaporized. I console the masses by offering to rebuild it in my own image of... He was done.
At the start of the game, you're told Superman was tricked into killing Lois Lane. He then ends the Joker's life, which sets him on a megalomaniacal path where he pretty much turns into a controlling Earth fearmonger.
It's a familiar storyline if you're into the comics or the animated series, which I am, as you can see from my figurine collection just here. And it works well because Superman is at the top of the superhero food chain, so when he's a villain, he's an excellent villain, and all the heroes have to pick sides. It also allows the heroes and villains to be put up against each other depending on where the narrative is placing them at the time, and that frees up the devs to set up any fights that they choose. To add to this, they also pull in characters from another dimension, which has created one of the most intense Batman vs. Batman fights I have ever seen.
I love how there's just so much story to watch. Solid fight scenes and some epic moments which do have that low budget feel to them at times, but once again, this is the first fighter with a decent campaign, so you just forgive it.
I did find it hard to work out sometimes who was from which dimension and where, and there are some pretty weak moments in this campaign, to be fair.
Yeah, we've had some, wild times.
Also, the villains aren't explored that much in the campaign, and neither is Hawkgirl, who is one of my favourite DC superheroes, and she's really just a goon here. I'm so glad she's in the game, though, as well as Grundy. He's also one of my favourites, and you never really see him very much. I just wish this campaign was twice as long, and they explored everyone fully.
I do think there is a lot of assumed knowledge with some of these characters, though. They have done a really good job of making a compelling story out of such a big ensemble cast, which wouldn't be an easy thing to do. I also really love those transitions from scene to scene. They've made really good use of the game's fighting locations to save on building new set pieces. But, you know, I think it's okay that the campaign has a few rough edges because it means more time has been spent on the combat, which is what really matters.
Yeah, and I think there's enough fan service in there. I was certainly squealing at every little subtle reference from some obscure comic or TV show.
I'll have to tell Batman, there's been a death in the family.
I also think they really nailed Aquaman and Green Arrow and Batman scenes, and every time Ares popped up, he's just a badass dude.
Ah, Aquaman, the joke of the superhero world. I'm happy to say that he's awesome in this.
Yeah, ever since they rebooted DC, Aquaman's actually become one of their best heroes. Cyborg, however...
Wonderful.
I'm so sick of Cyborg. If you're across all of DC's stuff right now, you feel like Cyborg has kind of been thrown in your face. They really want to push him, and he's just so boring. Also, there are some weird choices while we're talking about the character selection. More importantly, there's a few strange omissions, like no Martian Manhunter, even though you see him in the background now and then. There's no Booster Gold, would have been amazing. There's no Blue Beetle or Zatanna.
Okay, well, you can't expect them to put every single superhero in their Bajo. And you have to admit, it's a pretty good selection.
There's no Dr. Fate, but yeah, it is a pretty good collection. But let's talk about the fighting. There's some interesting mechanics and layers of strategy here. If you've come from Mortal Kombat, then there's a few things to get used to, like there's no block button, you simply hold back, and also one of the face buttons is assigned to a specific superhero power, and you're used to that being a kick, and that took me ages to get used to. But once you get past that, you can start chaining combos and juggling enemies in the air, and it gets pretty intense.
I also liked how each character has sort of an extra modified special that you can activate by hitting circle. Superman is simply more damage. Aquaman, for example, has a defensive water coating to help get out of trouble. Green Arrow fires various arrow types. Some will definitely feel more useful to you than others, and some we just plain didn't like, such as Wonder Woman, who switches from sword and shield to flying as her special. But neither stance feels particularly fun to use.
Yeah, you know, I like most of the models, but I just don't like Wonder Woman in general. She's weird, there's something wrong with her face, and it's kind of like they've taken her chest plate and her boobs and just like stretched it in the model, and she just looks wrong.
I think they've just gone with the really sort of strong, masculine, Amazonian sort of interpretation of Wonder Woman and then tried to feminize her by making her kind of larger, but they've not done a very good job of it.
I don't think they have. I've seen a lot of really good Wonder Womans, and I don't think this is a good one. It's hard to gauge how balanced all of these fighters are when there are so many crazy abilities. But Aquaman is definitely a bit overpowered. If you're fighting someone who's using him and they know what they're doing, they'll just cover all ranges and you can't beat him. And there are some excellent ideas, such as how you're encouraged to do a special move straight after a combo for a bonus. And after a while, you start to get a good sense of all the telegraphing of each character's abilities. I think they nailed most of the special moves though, because if you miss, there's a decent window of opportunity left for someone to take advantage of your mistake.
There is very little room for error though. I mean, I couldn't even get some of those combos out in time in the tutorial, especially those bouncers.
Yeah, me neither. And I did struggle with the Xbox 360 D-pad a little bit, and I had to go to PS3 version.
Yeah, there's a lot to remember here, but there's some really deep combat ideas which will beckon the pro players, I think. The wager mechanic, for example, lets you pit a certain amount of your super bar against your enemies, and it can drastically turn the tide of battle.
Along with a few charged abilities, you can also modify your super moves by giving up a bar of your super gauge. And this is fantastic because it's unpredictable and it can change a combo in a really interesting way. But if you fill up your super bar, you can unleash a giant special attack. They're glorious. I especially like Aquaman's with the shark in the water and everything.
I love how the Flash just goes for a run around the Earth and comes back. Just gives a bit of a run up for that.
Yeah.
You have to really pick your moments for them as well. They can be dodged if you know the character well enough. For example, Joker's pie in the face can be ducked, so it's worth trying to activate it when your enemy is in the air or falling from an uppercut to make sure it lands.
On top of all that, the backgrounds crumble and fall apart as you fight, and it all feels very dynamic and superhero-y.
I love how environmental these fights are. I mean, when I think about the best fight choreography from, you know, good action movies, they're the ones that use aspects of the environment around them. And that's what this felt like, and it's so cool.
Yeah, it is so exciting, isn't it? And especially because you forget that it's there sometimes until someone throws a car at you. And in a nice touch, if your character doesn't have super strength, they won't hurl an object, they'll simply place a bomb on it or aim it as a weapon. On top of all that, if you're near a wall, you can sometimes do a special kick to send your enemy to another location, and they get pretty smacked up along the way. They've just gone all out on these.
The transitions are amazing. I mean, they've come a pretty long way from punching someone from a subway up to a rooftop in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Now, Hex, as you know, I'm quite a big fan of Justice League and DC Universe, as you can see from my figurine collection just over here. So I'd just like to go through each character briefly.
Okay, you can't go through all of them, and I'm going to time you. Ready? Go.
All right, Batman. I found him a little bit boring, but he does look great. Hawkgirl is awesome, and her mace hits really hard. Aquaman's trident is fast and deadly and fantastic in close quarters combos. Ares is solid once you get used to his modifiable leaps, and his super is amazing. Bane and Grundy are slow but hit hard. Shazam is pretty much Raiden from Mortal Kombat, and that's just fine. Catwoman is fluid, and her moves are perfectly vicious. Cyborg, I just don't like Cyborg.
Okay, wrap it up, Barjo.
All right, Wonder Woman, we've talked about her, weird. Deathstroke's guns feel a bit silly, but his sword attacks are really fun. Flash's static looks incredible, and I love his outfit. Green Arrow is one of the most fluid characters when it comes to combos. Green Lantern's imagination must be quite limited because he just hurls a few missiles and stuff, which is a little disappointing. Sinestro is fantastic though, even though he has a creepy mustache. Nightwing's staff has excellent range, but his short sticks feel a little useless to me. I like the way Harley Quinn moves and fights, but one of her outfits is just terrible. She's wearing underpants and overly sexualized, and that's not who Harley is. This is who Harley is. Lex Luthor is fantastic, and it's so nice to finally get to play in his famous mech suit. Raven's ranged magic is deadly when spammed. Killer Frost is pretty cool. And the Joker, calm, collected, pure evil, and vicious.
And that's time, Bajo.
So
time,
good.
time.
Okay, well, I had a fantastic time with this game. At first, I didn't know how to feel about it because it did feel so different to MK versus DC, but once I started to get into the different layers of the mechanics and the combat, I had so much fun with this. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I will say I think it's weird how they all get up after getting knocked down only to fall over again. And we couldn't find any handicaps for multiplayer, which is a bit of a shame. But this is a top fighter with some killer spectator modes in online, such as King of the Hill. So I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens. You wanna grab some for us and we'll battle it out.
You're not allowed to touch them.
Really?
Yeah.
Not even just Hawkgirl's your
Dirty
favorite
fingers
kind?
away.
My hands are clean.
Yeah, not clean enough.